The first text I received from my neighbor Lindsay came on a crisp September morning while I was feeding my chickens. Patricia from the HOA is taking pictures of your backyard. Just thought you should know. My stomach dropped as I peeked through the coop window to see a middle-aged woman with blonde highlights styled in a perfect bob, smartphone aimed directly at my chicken run. I'd only been living in Meadowbrook Estates in Fairfield County, Connecticut, for 6 months. After inheriting my late uncle's property, I traded my cramped New York apartment for 3 acres of what I discovered was historically agricultural land. My name is Thomas Reeves, and I never thought I'd become a chicken farmer at 35, but life takes unexpected turns. Before moving, I'd verified with county officials that the property maintained its agricultural designation, despite being absorbed into the Meadowbrook Estates development years ago. The previous homeowners hadn't utilized these rights, but my uncle had insisted in his will that I remember the land's purpose. So I'd started small: a vegetable garden, a modest coop, and 8 happy hens named after my favorite authors. My phone pinged again. Lindsay had sent a photo of the woman, now standing at the edge of my property, furiously typing on her phone. "That's Patricia Keller, HOA president. Watch out." I sighed, finishing my chicken chores. I'd read the HOA guidelines carefully before bringing in my birds. There was nothing explicitly prohibiting livestock, though there were the usual noise and nuisance clauses. Still, I had a bad feeling about Patricia's surveillance. 2 days later, an official-looking envelope arrived in my mailbox. Inside was a violation notice from the Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association, citing unauthorized livestock on my property. The letter, signed by Patricia Keller, president, demanded removal of all chickens within 7 days or face a $100 daily fine. I called the HOA office immediately and asked to speak with Patricia. "This is Patricia Keller," she answered, her voice clipped and professional. "Miss Keller, this is Thomas Reeves from 427 Orchard Lane. I received your violation notice about my chickens, but I believe there's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding, Mr. Reeves. Our covenant clearly prohibits livestock. Actually, I've read through all the documents, and there's no specific prohibition against chickens. Furthermore, my property maintains its agricultural zoning designation with the county." The line went silent for a moment before Patricia's voice returned, noticeably colder. "Mr. Reeves, perhaps you're new to how things work in a proper community, but the HOA board has interpreted the nuisance clause to include all livestock. We don't allow farm animals in Meadowbrook Estates, period. But my property is. The 7-day notice stands. Remove the chickens or pay the fines. Have a nice day." She hung up. I stood in my kitchen, staring at my phone in disbelief. Through the window, I could see my chicken coop, nothing elaborate. Just a neat wooden structure with an attached run where Austen, Hemingway, and the other feathered ladies spent their days clucking contentedly. They weren't noisy, they didn't smell, and they stayed contained in my backyard. That evening I called my cousin, Teresa Williams, who happened to be a real estate attorney in Hartford. "So you've met the neighborhood Karen," Teresa said after I explained the situation. "Classic HOA overreach, but you might actually have a strong case here, Tom." "Really? How so?" "If your property truly maintains its agricultural zoning designation, despite being part of the HOA, that's a significant detail. County zoning typically supersedes HOA covenants when there's a conflict. Do you have documentation of the zoning?" I did. My uncle had kept meticulous records, including the original deed showing the property's agricultural status, and correspondence with the county confirming this designation remained active despite the development around it. Perfect. Send me everything you have. In the meantime, don't remove your chickens. Respond to the violation notice in writing, stating that you're disputing their interpretation and that your property maintains agricultural zoning rights that predate the HOA. I followed Teresa's advice, spending that evening drafting a formal response. I kept it professional but firm, attaching copies of the zoning documentation and requesting a formal hearing with the HOA board as outlined in their own bylaws. The next day, I hand-delivered the letter to the HOA office, where a young receptionist accepted it with a sympathetic smile. "You're the chicken guy, right?" she asked in a hushed voice. "I guess I am." She glanced around before leaning forward. "Just so you know, you're not the first person Patricia has gone after. Last year, she made the Johnsons tear out their vegetable garden because she said it was unsightly." "A vegetable garden? That seems extreme." The receptionist nodded. "Patricia has strong opinions about what Meadowbrook should look like. Good luck with your chickens. They sound nice." As I walked back to my car, I noticed Patricia herself emerging from the community center. She spotted me immediately, her eyes narrowing as she changed course to intercept me. "Mr. Reeves, I trust you're making arrangements for your chickens." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Actually, I've just submitted my formal dispute of the violation notice. My property maintains its agricultural zoning designation, which predates the HOA's establishment." Patricia's smile faltered slightly. "That's irrelevant. When you purchased the property, you agreed to abide by our covenants." "I did, and nothing in those covenants specifically prohibits chickens. Furthermore, my county zoning rights can't be invalidated by the HOA." I tried to keep my tone conversational rather than confrontational. Patricia's face hardened. "Mr. Reeves, I've been president of this association for 8 years. I know what's best for our community values and property values. Your farm animals do not align with the prestigious character of Meadowbrook Estates. They're just chickens, Miss Keller. 8 hens that don't make noise and stay in their enclosure. Today it's chickens. Tomorrow, who knows? Goats, pigs, we simply can't allow this precedent." She adjusted her designer handbag on her shoulder. "The board meeting is next Thursday. You're welcome to plead your case, but I wouldn't get your hopes up." As she walked away, I noticed several neighbors watching our exchange from their porches and windows. One older gentleman gave me a subtle thumbs up. Later that week, I received unexpected visits from 3 different neighbors, each bringing some pretext of welcome gifts despite my having lived there for months. The real purpose became clear as they each, in their own way, expressed support for my chicken situation. "My granddaughter loves seeing your chickens when we walk by," said Mrs. Petrovich from down the street. "Patricia needs to mind her own business." Frank Martinez from across the cul-de-sac brought over homemade salsa. "My wife and I have been thinking about chickens ourselves." "You're fighting the good fight, man." Most surprising was the visit from Roger Wilson, who served on the HOA board. "Look, I can't officially say anything," he said quietly on my front porch, "but Patricia doesn't speak for all of us. Some of us think she's gone too far lately." The day before the board meeting, Teresa called with good news. "I spoke with the county zoning office. They confirmed your property's agricultural designation is still valid. They're even willing to send a representative to your HOA hearing if needed." "That's fantastic." I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. "There's more," Teresa continued. "I did some digging into the HOA's incorporation documents. Turns out when the development was established, the county specifically required that properties like yours with existing agricultural designations retain those rights. It's actually written into the HOA's founding documents. though it's buried in the appendices. So Patricia either doesn't know or is ignoring it. Either way, you've got them cornered legally. Just stay calm at the meeting. Let them make their case, then present yours clearly. When Thursday evening arrived, I was surprised to find the community center meeting room packed. Word had spread about the chicken dispute, and it seemed many residents were interested in the outcome. Patricia sat at the center of the board table, flanked by 4 other board members. Her expression was stern as she called the meeting to order. After routine business was concluded, Patricia announced, "We now move to the hearing regarding the livestock violation at 427 Orchard Lane. Mr. Reeves, you have 5 minutes to address the board." I stood, straightened my jacket, and approached the podium. Behind me, I could feel dozens of eyes watching. I'd prepared my remarks carefully, focusing on facts rather than emotions. "Good evening. I'm here to address the violation notice regarding my chickens. I'd like to present 3 key points. First, nothing in the HOA covenants specifically prohibits chickens or small livestock. The nuisance clause is being interpreted beyond its reasonable scope. Second, and most importantly, my property at 427 Orchard Lane maintains a legal agricultural zoning designation with Fairfield County that predates the establishment of this HOA. I have documentation from the county confirming this designation remains active." I held up the official letter from the zoning office. Third, the HOA's own incorporation documents, specifically Appendix C, Paragraph 4, explicitly states that properties with pre-existing agricultural designations retain those rights regardless of subsequent covenant amendments. I presented copies of the highlighted document to the board members. Patricia's face had grown increasingly flushed during my presentation. When I finished, she cleared her throat. "Mr. Reeves, while we appreciate your thoroughness, the board has already determined that livestock is inconsistent with our community standards. The interpretation of our covenants is at the discretion of this board." Roger Wilson, the board member who had visited me, spoke up. "I'd like to review these documents more carefully. Patricia, if what Mr. Reeves is saying is accurate, we may not have the authority to prohibit his chickens. The violation stands until the board votes otherwise," Patricia insisted. "And I remind everyone that our primary responsibility is to maintain property values." An older woman in the audience raised her hand and spoke without being recognized. "I've lived in Meadowbrook for 20 years, and I remember when that property was a working farm. If the county says he can have chickens, who are we to say otherwise?" Several voices murmured in agreement, causing Patricia to bang her gavel. "Order, please. This is not a town hall discussion." Just then, the door to the meeting room opened and a man in a county uniform entered. He approached the podium and introduced himself. "Good evening. I'm Mark Lawson from the Fairfield County Zoning Office. We were made aware of this dispute and felt it necessary to clarify the county's position." Patricia looked stunned. "This is a private HOA matter, Mr. Lawson." "With respect, Ms. Keller, when it involves county zoning ordinances, it becomes a county matter as well." Mr. Lawson turned to address the room. "The property at 427 Orchard Lane maintains a valid agricultural use designation under County Ordinance 45B. This designation permits the keeping of livestock appropriate to the property size, including poultry. This zoning designation supersedes any conflicting HOA restrictions as per Connecticut state law regarding grandfathered agricultural rights." The room erupted in whispers. Patricia's face had gone from flushed to pale. "Furthermore," Mr. Lawson continued, "the county has received multiple complaints about this HOA's potential violation of protected agricultural rights. We're opening a formal review of all similar cases in Meadowbrook Estates from the past 5 years. The meeting descended into chaos after that. Patricia abruptly called for a recess, and the board retreated to a private room. 20 minutes later, they returned, and Roger Wilson, not Patricia, addressed the audience. After reviewing the documentation and consulting with Mr. Lawson, the board has voted to rescind the violation notice issued to Mr. Reeves regarding his chickens. His property's agricultural designation has been confirmed, and the HOA acknowledges his right to maintain appropriate livestock within county guidelines. Patricia remained silent, her posture rigid and her gaze fixed on some point above everyone's heads. As the meeting adjourned, neighbors approached to congratulate me. Patricia slipped out a side door without speaking to anyone. The next morning, I found a small basket of baked goods on my porch with a note. "Victory cookies for you and corn treats for the ladies. Congratulations. Your neighbors at 432 and 436 Orchard Lane." I was feeding these treats to my chickens when Lindsay texted again. "You won't believe this. Patricia just announced her resignation as HOA president for personal reasons. The board's calling a special election next month." It seemed the chicken dispute had ruffled more than just feathers in Meadowbrook Estates. I felt vindicated but not particularly triumphant. I just wanted to keep my small flock alive peacefully. That peace lasted exactly 2 weeks. The knock on my door came early on a Saturday morning. I opened it to find a woman I recognized from the HOA meeting but hadn't formally met. "Mr. Reeves, I'm Pamela Walsh, the interim HOA president following Patricia's resignation." Her smile seemed genuine, unlike Patricia's practiced grimace. "I wanted to personally apologize for the confusion regarding your property rights." "I appreciate that, Miss Walsh. Would you like to come in for coffee? That would be lovely." As we sat at my kitchen table, Pamela was direct. Patricia was passionate about her vision for Meadowbrook, but sometimes that led to overstepping. "The board is committed to a more balanced approach moving forward." "That's good to hear." Pamela hesitated. "Unfortunately, I'm not just here with good news. Patricia didn't take her defeat gracefully, I'm afraid." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "She's filed a private nuisance lawsuit against you personally, separate from the HOA. She's claiming your chickens have caused her emotional distress and reduced her property value." Pamela looked genuinely concerned. "I wanted to warn you before you received the official notice." I set down my coffee cup. "That's absurd. She lives on the other side of the development. She can't even see my property from her house." "I know. Many of us think it's ridiculous, but Patricia has connections with some expensive lawyers who are taking the case." Pamela sighed. "There's something else you should know. Patricia's husband is Gregory Keller. Should that name mean something to me, he's on the County Planning Commission. Has been for nearly a decade." The implication was clear. Patricia had thought she could leverage her husband's position to override my zoning rights. When that failed, she decided to attack through different channels. True to Pamela's warning, I received the lawsuit notice 3 days later. Patricia was seeking $50,000 in damages for diminished property value, emotional distress, and quality of life impairment, allegedly caused by my chickens. The filing included claims that chicken noises disrupted her sleep, impossible given the distance. That odors reached her property, equally impossible. And that the unsightly agricultural use had made her home harder to sell. She wasn't even trying to sell. I immediately called Teresa. "This is pure harassment," she said after reviewing the documents. "It's a strategic lawsuit against public participation, a slap suit. She's hoping you'll give up rather than fight an expensive legal battle." "What do we do?" Connecticut has anti-slap legislation. will file for dismissal under those protections, and will countersue for legal fees and harassment. The next month became a blur of legal filings, evidence gathering, and community drama. What surprised me most was the neighborhood response. Far from turning against me, many Meadowbrook residents rallied to my defense. Several submitted affidavits stating they lived closer to my property than Patricia and had never experienced any nuisance from my chickens. Lindsay organized a community potluck in my backyard, deliberately within view of my chicken coop, where over 30 neighbors came to show support. Pamela attended as a private citizen rather than as HOA president, making her position clear. Meanwhile, the lawsuit revealed interesting information through discovery. Emails between Patricia and her husband showed they had discussed using his position to make problems for my zoning designation. There were also messages to a real estate developer friend about potential interest in purchasing agricultural properties in the area for rezoning, including mine. The judge assigned to the case, the Honorable Eleanor Barnes, didn't bother hiding her skepticism during the initial hearing. Mrs. Keller, you claim chicken noises disrupt your sleep, yet your home is located approximately half a mile from Mr. Reeves' property. How exactly do these sounds reach you? Patricia's lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit, intervened. Your Honor, my client is particularly sensitive to noise disruptions. So sensitive she can hear chickens through closed windows from half a mile away. Judge Barnes raised an eyebrow. And regarding your claim of odors, have you had any environmental assessment done to substantiate this? We have testimony from Mrs. Keller that's not what I asked, Counselor. Do you have any objective evidence? As the hearing progressed, it became increasingly clear that Patricia had no case. The judge granted our motion to dismiss under Connecticut's anti-SLAPP statute, ordering Patricia to pay my legal fees. Furthermore, she referred Gregory Keller's apparent conflict of interest to the County Ethics Commission for review. Outside the courthouse, I found myself surrounded by reporters from local papers. The chicken fight, as they called it, had become something of a cause célèbre in Fairfield County. Mr. Reeves, how do you feel about the judge's decision? Asked a reporter from the Fairfield Gazette. Relieved. This was never about chickens. It was about following the rules, the actual rules, not someone's personal interpretation of them. Will you be expanding your farm operations now? I laughed. I'm happy with my 8 chickens. I'm not planning an agricultural empire. As the reporters dispersed, I noticed Patricia and her husband hurrying to their luxury SUV, avoiding questions and cameras. I felt no desire to gloat. The whole situation had been unnecessarily stressful and expensive for everyone involved. That evening, as I collected eggs from the coop, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Is this Thomas Reeves?" asked a woman's voice I didn't recognize. "Yes, it is. Mr. Reeves, my name is Diana Cooper from the Fairfield County Agricultural Heritage Commission. We've been following your case with interest." "Oh," I gathered the last egg, warm in my palm. "Yes, your situation highlights a growing problem across Connecticut. Development is encroaching on historically agricultural lands, and HOAs are often attempting to override zoning protections. We're working on a county initiative to better protect these designated properties, and we'd love your input." What began as a simple desire to keep a few chickens had apparently sparked a larger conversation about land use and property rights in the county. In the months that followed, I became unexpectedly involved in local advocacy for agricultural zoning protections. The Meadowbrook Estates, HOA, under Pamela's leadership, revised its covenants to explicitly acknowledge the rights of properties with agricultural designations. Roger Wilson, who had supported me at that crucial board meeting, was elected as the new permanent president when Pamela stepped down. Patricia and Gregory Keller put their house on the market 3 months after the lawsuit's dismissal. Gregory had been formally reprimanded by the Ethics Commission and had resigned from the Planning Commission. They moved to a gated community in Florida, according to neighborhood gossip. As for me, I expanded my garden, added a small greenhouse, and yes, got 4 more chickens. My farm became something of a neighborhood attraction, with families often stopping by during evening walks to say hello to the chickens. 1 year after the initial complaint, I hosted a neighborhood coop warming party to celebrate the completion of my expanded chicken coop, designed with the help of a local agricultural architecture student. Over 50 neighbors attended, bringing dishes often made with eggs from my chickens, which I'd been sharing generously. Pamela pulled me aside during the party. "You know, when you first moved in with your chickens, Patricia told everyone you'd destroy property values. I just got my home appraised for a refinance. Values in Meadowbrook are up 12% over last year. I doubt my chickens can take credit for that," I laughed. "No, but the sense of community that grew while everyone rallied around you, that's worth something." She gestured to the neighbors chatting in small groups around my backyard. Patricia never understood that a neighborhood is more than just property values and matching mailboxes. A week after the party, I received an official letter from the Fairfield County Board of Supervisors. They were launching a new agricultural heritage protection program and cited my case as a catalyst for the initiative. They invited me to speak at the inaugural event. Standing at the podium in the county administrative building, looking out at a room full of officials, farmers, and concerned citizens, I reflected on how far things had come from that first text from Lindsay warning me about a woman taking pictures of my chickens. "I never intended to become an advocate for agricultural zoning rights," I told the audience. "I just wanted to collect fresh eggs from my backyard." But what I discovered through this process is that the laws protecting agricultural use aren't just about chickens or crops. They're about preserving options for our communities, maintaining connections to the land, and respecting the diverse ways people want to use their property within reasonable bounds. After the event, an elderly man approached me. He introduced himself as Harold Freeman, a lifelong farmer whose property was now surrounded by suburban developments. "Been fighting with my HOA for 5 years about my tractor," he told me. "They say it's an eyesore when I park it visible from the road. Your case gives me hope. The law's on your side," I assured him. "Don't let them wear you down." Harold nodded thoughtfully. "You know, we're losing agricultural knowledge every generation. Kids growing up thinking food appears magically in grocery stores. What you're doing even just with a few chickens keeps that connection alive." His words stayed with me as I drove home. What had begun as a personal dispute over chickens had evolved into something more meaningful, a small stand for the rights of property owners to maintain traditional land uses in the face of suburban homogenization. When I arrived home, I found a package on my porch with a handwritten note. "Thought your literary ladies might enjoy their own library. Lindsay." Inside was a charming miniature bookshelf designed to mount in the chicken coop, along with weather-protected copies of books by the authors my chickens were named after. I installed the chicken library that evening, smiling as Austin immediately pecked at her namesakes, Pride and Prejudice. The simple joy of these creatures continuing to live on my property felt like a significant victory. That night, I sat on my back porch watching the sunset over my small piece of agricultural heritage. I reflected on how different my life had become since inheriting this property, not just the addition of chickens and gardens, but the unexpected role I'd found in my community and county. My phone chimed with a text from Teresa. "Heard about your speech today. Uncle Robert would be proud." I thought about my late uncle, who'd insisted I remember the land's purpose. He couldn't have predicted the battle that would ensue, but perhaps he'd understood something important about connection to place that I was only beginning to appreciate. The following spring brought new developments, literal and figurative. The vacant lot at the edge of Meadowbrook Estates was purchased by a developer planning to build 15 luxury homes. This land, unlike mine, had no agricultural designation, but the proposed development would significantly increase traffic and strain resources in our community. The new HOA board, led by Roger, organized a community meeting to discuss a unified response. I attended out of curiosity and solidarity, finding myself in the unusual position of sitting alongside many of the same neighbors who had supported me against the HOA a year earlier. Only now, we were working with the HOA toward a common goal. Roger acknowledged me with a nod as I took my seat. "Glad you could join us, Tom. We could use your experience with county zoning matters." The meeting room was packed, with concerned faces all around. Roger outlined the developer's plans and the potential impacts on Meadowbrook. "The County Planning Commission will review the proposal next month," he explained. "We need to present a unified community position." As discussions continued, I found myself drawn into conversations about buffer zones, traffic studies, and environmental impacts. My recent experiences had given me unexpected knowledge about local regulations and procedures. Lindsay nudged me. "You should be on the committee to represent us at the Planning Commission." Me, I'm the chicken guy, not exactly an expert on development issues. "You successfully stood up to Patricia Keller and the county backed you. That's more than most of us have done." Before I knew it, I had been nominated to a 3-person committee to represent Meadowbrook at the Planning Commission hearings. After the meeting, Roger approached me. "Never thought we'd end up on the same side, did you?" "Life's full of surprises," I admitted. "Like chickens bringing a community together," Roger laughed. "Patricia would have a fit if she could see this." As it happened, Patricia did find out. 2 days before the Planning Commission meeting, I received a call from an unknown number. "Mr. Reeves." Patricia's voice was instantly recognizable. "I understand you're representing Meadowbrook against the Orchard View development." I was so surprised to hear from her that it took me a moment to respond. "That's correct. The community has concerns about the scope of the project. I thought you'd like to know that my husband still has friends on the commission. Your little chicken victory won't be repeated." "This isn't about chickens, Patricia. It's about responsible development. It's about you continuing to be a troublemaker." Gregory made calls. "The commission already has its mind made up. Your appearance is just a formality." Before I could respond, she hung up. I immediately called Roger and the other committee members to relay the conversation. "That's concerning," Roger said, "but not entirely surprising. The Kellers always played the influence game." "Should we be worried about the hearing?" I asked, more determined, not worried. "If she's trying to intimidate us, that suggests they're actually concerned about our position." The day of the Planning Commission hearing arrived with tension in the air. The Meadowbrook Committee had prepared thorough documentation of our concerns, including independent traffic and environmental impact studies, funded by HOA reserves. As we entered the county building, I spotted Gregory Keller in deep conversation with 2 commission members in the hallway. They quickly separated when they noticed our group approaching. The hearing room was filled to capacity. Roger presented our case first, outlining concerns about infrastructure strain, traffic safety, and environmental impacts. I followed with specific zoning concerns, drawing on my own experience with agricultural zoning to highlight inconsistencies in the developer's application. When the developer's representative took the floor, he dismissed our concerns as typical NIMBY reactions and emphasized the economic benefits of the luxury development. What caught my attention, however, was his familiarity with certain commission members, addressing them by first names and making inside jokes. After presentations concluded, the commission chair, a stern woman named Victoria Harding, made an unexpected announcement. In light of concerns raised about potential conflicts of interest, I am recusing myself and 2 other members from voting on this matter today. She looked directly at Gregory Keller in the audience. Additionally, I am requesting an ethics review of communications between commission members and interested parties prior to this hearing. A murmur swept through the room. Gregory Keller stood abruptly and left. The remaining commission members voted to table the development application pending further studies and the ethics review. Outside the hearing room, local reporters gathered around our committee. "Mr. Reeves, do you believe Patricia and Gregory Keller attempted to influence this process inappropriately?" asked a reporter I recognized from my chicken lawsuit coverage. I can only say that we presented factual concerns about the development proposal, and we appreciate the Commission's commitment to a fair and transparent process. The headline in the next day's Fairfield Gazette read, "Chicken Fight Victor Now Taking on Developers. Ethics Concerns Halt Luxury Project." 2 days later, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find a county sheriff's deputy with official documents. Thomas Reeves. "This is a cease and desist order regarding public statements about Patricia and Gregory Keller, along with a defamation lawsuit." I accepted the papers with a sinking feeling. The Kellers were suing me again, this time claiming I had made false statements to the Planning Commission and to the press, implying they had engaged in corrupt practices. Teresa was less concerned when I called her. This is even more obviously a slap suit than the chicken case. They're trying to silence public participation in government proceedings. The anti-slap protections are designed precisely for this situation. So we fight again, we fight. And this time, we go after them for legal harassment. This pattern of filing baseless lawsuits to intimidate you is textbook abuse of process. The case moved quickly, with Judge Barnes coincidentally assigned to hear it again. She remembered the chicken lawsuit all too well. "Counselor," she addressed the Keller's attorney during the initial hearing, "your clients seem to have developed a habit of filing lawsuits against Mr. Reeves whenever he exercises his legal rights in ways they find inconvenient." "Your Honor, my clients have suffered real reputational damage from Mr. Reeves' implications of corruption. What specific statements are alleged to be defamatory? I've reviewed the newspaper articles and hearing transcript." The attorney fumbled through papers. "Mr. Reeves communicated to the Planning Commission chairperson that my clients had improperly influenced commission members." Judge Barnes peered over her glasses. "Did he?" "Because the transcript shows he simply reported a phone conversation in which Mrs. Keller claimed her husband had made calls to commission members. Was that phone call fabricated?" "No, Your Honor, but so Mr. Reeves truthfully reported a conversation, and the commission chairperson independently determined this merited an ethics review." "Where is the defamation?" "The case was dismissed with prejudice, meaning the Kellers could not refile it. Furthermore, Judge Barnes granted our counter-motion for sanctions against the Kellers and their attorney for filing a frivolous lawsuit." In her written opinion, Judge Barnes was scathing. "This court finds the plaintiffs have engaged in a pattern of using the legal system to harass and intimidate the defendant for exercising his legally protected rights. Such behavior constitutes an abuse of process and will not be tolerated in this jurisdiction. The Kellers were ordered to pay my legal fees plus punitive damages. More significantly, the judge referred both Patricia and Gregory Keller to the State Bar Association for investigation, as both were actually licensed, though non-practicing, attorneys. The ethics review of the Planning Commission concluded 3 months later, finding that Gregory Keller had indeed attempted to improperly influence the process. 2 commission members resigned, and new procedures were implemented requiring disclosure of all communications between commission members and interested parties. The developer eventually resubmitted a significantly scaled-back proposal for the Orchard View development, reducing it from 15 homes to 8, with larger lots and substantial green space buffers. The Meadowbrook HOA, while still having concerns, worked collaboratively with the developer to address specific issues. At the 1-year anniversary of my chicken victory, Meadowbrook Estates held a community festival on the common green. To my embarrassment, Roger and the social committee had selected a theme: chickens and community, celebrating our agricultural heritage. Children ran around with chicken masks, local farmers set up information booths, and my chickens were the stars of a small petting area I'd reluctantly agreed to set up. Even the county agricultural commissioner attended, using the event to announce new initiatives supporting small-scale urban agriculture throughout Fairfield County. As I stood by the refreshment table, watching neighbors chat and children play, Lindsay approached with a newspaper. "Seen this?" She handed me the Fairfield Gazette's weekend edition. The headline read, "Former HOA president and husband charged with ethics violations." The article detailed how Patricia and Gregory Keller faced professional censure and fines for their actions against me and the Planning Commission. It also mentioned they had sold their Florida home and moved to Arizona. "Seems like karma caught up with them," Lindsay remarked. "I never wanted it to go this far," I admitted. "I just wanted to keep my chickens." Sometimes standing up for small things reveals bigger issues. She gestured around at the festival. "Look what came from it, though. The community's stronger. People know their rights better. The county's protecting agricultural heritage, all because you wouldn't get rid of 8 chickens." The festival concluded with Roger presenting me with a tongue-in-cheek Defender of Chickens' Rights plaque that received laughs and applause from the gathered neighbors. I accepted it with good humor, though I felt the recognition was disproportionate to what had ultimately been a personal matter that spiraled into something larger. That evening, as I closed up the chicken coop, I found myself reflecting on the strange journey of the past 2 years. From New York apartment dweller to accidental chicken farmer to reluctant community activist, none of it had been planned. My uncle's instruction to remember the land's purpose had led to far more than just keeping chickens. It had connected me to a heritage, a community, and a cause I hadn't known I valued. The following week, I received an unexpected email from the State Agricultural Department inviting me to participate in a working group on urban farming regulations. The commissioner had been impressed by my story and thought my experience could inform policy discussions. I also received inquiries from 3 neighboring communities dealing with similar HOA overreach issues. Apparently, my case had become something of a precedent in discussions about the limits of HOA authority versus county zoning rights. 2 years after moving to Meadowbrook Estates, my life had transformed in ways I never imagined. My property had expanded to include not just chickens but a thriving vegetable garden that supplied several local restaurants, a small orchard of heritage apple varieties, and even 2 beehives managed with the help of a local apiarist. The HOA, under Roger's leadership, had evolved as well. Rather than focusing primarily on enforcement and restrictions, it had become a vehicle for community engagement and education. Monthly workshops on gardening, composting, and yes, chicken keeping were well attended by residents eager to reconnect with agricultural traditions. Patricia and Gregory Keller became distant memories in Meadowbrook, occasionally referenced when new residents asked about the chicken story that had become part of local lore. Their aggressive tactics had ultimately backfired, strengthening the very community values they had tried to control through intimidation. On the 3rd anniversary of moving to Meadowbrook, I hosted an open house for neighbors and friends. As twilight fell, we gathered on my back patio overlooking the coop and gardens. Roger raised a glass in toast to Thomas Reeves, who taught us all that sometimes you have to ruffle feathers to make an omelet. Amidst the laughter, I felt a deep sense of belonging. What had begun as a simple desire to honor my uncle's wishes had evolved into something profound, a reclaiming of connection to land, to community, and to a way of life that balanced modern convenience with agricultural heritage. And it had all started with 8 chickens and 1 very angry HOA president. As guests departed that evening, Teresa lingered behind. "Uncle Robert would be amazed to see what you've done with this place." "I think he knew exactly what would happen," I replied, looking out over the property now thriving with life and purpose. "He just needed someone stubborn enough to stand their ground." "Like his chickens," Teresa laughed, referencing the determined birds that had started it all. "Exactly like his chickens," I agreed, closing the gate behind her. In the soft evening light, I walked back to the coop to check on my flock one last time before bed. Austin, my oldest hen, clucked contentedly as I approached. I reached down to stroke her feathers, grateful for the unexpected journey we'd taken together from city dweller to chicken keeper to community advocate, all because I'd refused to back down from what was right. Some battles, I'd learned, were worth fighting even when they started with something as simple as the right to keep a few chickens in your backyard.